It's Monday, and that means it's time for a new episode of Interviewing People, the career cast where you can learn about a variety of careers from people actually doing the work. Today I'll be talking with Ian Rafferty, who once walked these halls but is now a misdemeanor investigator for the Hancock County Public Defender's Office. Ian will be sharing about what a misdemeanor investigator does, what led him to follow this path within the criminal justice field, and much more. So enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Interviewing People Careercast. And today we have 2015 Van Buren graduate Ian Rafferty with us, and he is a misdemeanor investigator for the Hancock County Public Defender's Office. And he's going to be talking to us a little bit about that career. And it sounds really interesting, so I'm excited to hear what this is all about. So Ian, thank you very much for joining us. And I'd love for you to start out by just talking about when you were in high school, as you were looking ahead to graduation. Is this something you anticipated doing, or did you have other plans? What did that look like for you?
I always knew that I wanted to be in the criminal justice field. I just didn't know where I wanted to fit in there. I guess a big part of it was going to shadow day in 10th grade. And I went to the Findlay Police Department and I shadowed an officer there for the day. And that made me realize that I did not want to be a police officer. I didn't want to be a corrections officer or anything like that. I mean, I enjoyed the day. I learned a lot about the criminal justice system from that side. But at that point, I always knew that that really wasn't my thing. So there were other avenues I could go through in the criminal justice world. I just didn't know what they were at that point. So after graduating high school, I went to BGSU, decided I still want to stick with criminal justice, going through all those classes. And then when it became apparent to me was senior year at BGSU, you have to have an internship to graduate. I think you have to have 400 hours in the field. So I eventually got to the public defender's office. They took me in. And I was, I think, the first actual college intern they have. Normally they just have legal interns. So it was kind of different for them because I couldn't do any of the law things that they could normally do. So more on the investigative side of things. So I did that for my 400 hours. I mean, they liked what I did and everything. So they just hired me on after the fact. And then that's just kind of how I got my position now as misdemeanor investigator. So Did not plan for it, but it just kind of fell into my lap as I went. So.
Right. Well, and I think that's good for everyone to hear that, criminal justice doesn't just mean being in law enforcement, that there are a lot of other opportunities out there as well. So I noticed on your LinkedIn profile that while you were at BGSU, you worked as a writing consultant. Can I assume that was in the writing lab?
Yes, that was in the Learning Commons.
Okay.
At in the library there.
So has that helped you at all as you are currently in this position as a public defender or as a misdemeanor investigator with that office, or do you have to do much writing in that career?
I do quite a bit of writing. And I would say as a Learning Commons, like as a writing consultant there, it definitely did help me a lot. And so did, your class, just everything that you taught us. I took your AP senior year class, English. That definitely got me prepared for college writing. Because when I was tutoring other people who were freshmen, they definitely didn't have that same level of writing skill. So I do appreciate that and the rest of the staff at Van Buren. So thank you for preparing us for college. And I realized that kind of after the fact, not during it. Because I was like, wow, your class is kind of hard, but you're pushing us for a reason, and it definitely paid off. So, and even today, I do write a lot. I write motions for attorneys. They review them, send them over to the courts. And I do a lot of talking with clients, and I have to write everything down shorthand, make sure it makes sense for me and the attorney and for the client at the end of the day. So definitely a lot of writing.
Okay. So you said that basically they liked what you did for them while you were doing your internship. So was this a position that was already there, or did they kind of create this for you because they really liked what you had done already?
So the position was not there. There was one investigator in the office, and she did all the courts. So common pleas court, juvenile court, municipal court, investigator for all of them. And she goes on vacation for 3 to 4 weeks every year. And then everyone else in the office kind of covers all her courts. So when she was gone on vacation, I just took the municipal court stuff, and I just do non-drug related misdemeanors. So she does drug-related misdemeanors because those could potentially turn into a felony in the future. So she just handles those. So when she came back from her vacation, I just kind of continued to do those. And then after my 400 hours, my internship were up, I graduated. They just said, hey, why don't you just stay here? And then here I'm now. So
Well, that had to make you feel good that you had done good enough work that they were saying, hey, let's create a position for this guy. We want to keep him.
yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about what you do as the misdemeanor investigator? I hear investigator and I'm thinking you're, following people down dark alleys and everything else. What does that entail?
No dark alleys, but I do a lot of intakes. So I see if people qualify for a public defender, and that's strictly on a financial basis. So they have to be not making a certain amount of money. There's a bunch of different stipulations that kind of go into it. So we have different charts and everything that we have to look at to see if people do financially qualify. And another thing is we can only represent people who have jailable offenses. So if you get a speeding ticket, you can't come over to us. And if it's your first one, we can't help you on that. So only jailable offenses. So I see if they qualify, and then if they do, so I'll get down all their past history, see if they're on probation, any other pending cases, and then I'll get their side of the story. So if somebody comes to us with a petty theft, so I'll get down all their information to see if there's what happened there, and if there's any like co-defendants, so if someone else was with them at the time, because that could be a potential conflict in the future, because if two people charged with a petty theft on the same incident, we can't represent both. So, because they're both being charged out of the same thing. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then after that, the intake's kind of over. I'll do all the paperwork for it. I'll do different motions. So like if they come to us with a charge and they have a bench warrant, I'll do a motion to lift the bench warrant, and I'll send that to the attorney for them to look over to see if they can send it over to the court to get that lifted. And then if they're in jail, we'll do hopefully a motion for an OR bond, which is own recognizance, basically trust the person to come back to court when they're supposed to be. So hopefully get them out of jail. And then another big thing that I do is kind of like read over police reports for the attorneys to see what all we can actually use there to help the client. And then I'll get surveillance videos from different incidents. So a lot of big things is like Walmart, I get their surveillance videos for petty thefts, just random videos from, I just had one for, there was a fight at a gas station, so I had to go over and get a copy of that from the detectives division at the Findlay Police Department. A lot of surveillance watching, and I do that for a lot of OVIs. So the state troopers, they have dash cams. So I'll get those from them, and then I'll review those, make sure that the trooper is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So when they do like the field sobriety test, like the follow the pen test with their finger or whatever, they have to be doing those a specific way. So I'll look at those and make sure that they're being compliant with those. So that's kind of the quick synopsis of what's going on there.
Interesting. So you are really working for the defendant, the person
Yes.
who is in trouble, and you are trying to make sure that that person has been treated fairly, and
Yes.
that going forward, they're also treated fairly, and the law is followed, and so forth. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So is there someone in the prosecutor's office that is doing similar to what you're doing, where they're trying to find, here's where we can prosecute this person? Or is there not really someone like you in the prosecutor's office?
I think there is. It's at least for like the misdemeanor cases. The detectives who work at the Findlay Police Department, I guess that's kind of the equivalent of me, except they're law enforcement as well. So they do kind of this stuff. And also the police officers, they can do some of that stuff as well, like gather witness statements. I do that on my end, and victim statements as well. So, they have the whole police force kind of doing what I do, but just on the other side of it. So,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, I've often thought that if I was a attorney to defend a criminal or someone who's been accused of a crime, so forth, I feel like that at times would be very, very difficult if I felt that maybe this person did do it or whatever. How does that work for you? Or do you remove yourself from situations where like that, or I don't know?
I want to say your opinion does not really matter in this job. Like, you cannot hold things to heart. somebody does something that you disagree with, I mean, you can't really share that with a client or announce that. I mean, that's something you just kind of have to keep to yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, you're here to help the clients in the best way that you can. So emotions need to stay out of it if it's something that is emotional. You just need to stay focused on the task at hand. Yeah, I would say a lot of suppressing some things. Some things are
Right.
difficult to deal with, and it's difficult for them to talk about too, because a lot of them do feel remorse about what they did if they did something. Everything's alleged until proven guilty. So,
Right.
um, yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing is keep your emotions out of it and just stay focused on why you are there, which is to help.
That's one
So,
of those characteristics of someone who wants to go into this job, have to be able to control emotions. And,
yes.
again, like you said, that, you're innocent until proven guilty, and I'm going to work to support you and so forth. So that's really interesting.
Mm.
So with this current position, you've been doing this, approaching 3 years.
Yeah.
And is this something that a person, and you or someone else in a position like this, that this is a long-term job, or is this more of a stepping stone, or how does this work for you, and where do you see yourself going in the future?
So I would say it's both. It can be long term or a stepping stone. So our other investigator, the original one, Susan, she's been here basically since the office is opened back in, I might be wrong, but like 1996. So she's been here for like over 20 plus years. Um, so I mean, that's looking long term for her at this point. So I don't think she's going anywhere else. But for me, I mean, this could be a stepping stone. Stepping stone. I don't really have any desire to move or find a different job at this point in my life. I mean, I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. So no complaints here. So I'm just gonna stay here and see what happens. So
Right. What are some other job possibilities that you might have been able to explore outside of, law enforcement, if you hadn't ended up being a misdemeanor investigator?
outside of law enforcement, I mean, you could be a other types of investigators, private investigators, or work for any of the three-letter agencies like CIA, FBI, stuff like that. Um, or you could go into law and actually become an attorney. So that's what some people do. They either get like a political science degree or criminal justice, and then they go into law from there.
Okay.
So I mean, that kind of depends on what you want to do. There are a lot of options out there. It's just you kind of have to go out there, find them, find the connections for them, and then pursue.
Did you find that many of your classmates at BGSU who earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, did they go on and go into law enforcement, or did most people do something like you're doing and go a different direction, but still in the criminal justice field?
I know quite a few became law enforcement or like corrections officers, like in jails. Um, I don't know too many people that did kind of like what I'm doing now. I feel like my job is kind of unique in the way that it just kind of presented itself to me, and I just kind of went in there and did it. But I'm sure other people have. I just haven't spoken with those people, but I know a lot did go into different types of law enforcement. Or another big one is becoming a probation officer. So that's
Okay.
what a lot of people do with criminal justice as well.
Okay. Now, you were at Van Buren a few weeks ago as part of Hancock Leadership, which
Yeah.
really awesome that you're doing that. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, so that, if students ever are presented with that opportunity, they have a better idea of what opportunities that could open for them?
Yeah. So I think there's about 30 of us in the class. So it's basically people who live within Hancock County. And we all meet up once a month or so, and then we go to different parts of the county, and then they kind of introduce us to how different things work. So these aren't the official titles, but we had like a water day where we went to like the Finley water treatment plant. They gave us a tour, showed us how everything worked. Went to the reservoir, talked about how everything, all the water moves into Finley and gets treated. We had a law day where we went over to Finley Police Department. We saw drug court as well. So, I mean, there's just different aspects of the county. And then we just kind of go there. They tell us about it. And then that's just something else that we can learn. And then we also do a project. So our project right now is called You Belong. So there was a study done called, I think it was by Inclusity. I think they're out of Toledo, and they did some focus groups, some interviews here within Hancock County to figure out if Hancock County was inclusive or not. And the results were that it's not the most inclusive. That's how people feel. So our job is kind of a campaign that says, hey, you do belong. And our end result is hopefully going to be a compilation of videos of people telling their stories about how they do or do not belong, just to kind of shed light on like, hey, if you don't feel like you belong, there are places for you, there are contacts or safe places and things of that nature out there. So we want to, end result is having everyone feel like they belong with Hancock County. So that's kind of our goal with this project.
Very cool. Very cool. As you think about the relationships that you're building through Hancock Leadership, how have relationships played a role in getting you to where you are today in your career?
I would say just having the rapport with everyone here at work. I mean, I work in a small office. There's 12 of us currently. Just building that rapport, and especially with the courts as well, like meeting with the judges when I was an intern, shadowing with everybody there, the attorneys, just meeting all those people, building those relationships. I mean, it's definitely helped. So I think a kind of a good example of kind of relationships and rapport is our attorneys. Like when you see on TV, like prosecutors and defense attorneys, you see them screaming at each other and everything, like they hate each other. Here in Finley, that's not the reality. I mean, they're friends. They work close together. I mean, because you kind of have to, because we want to get the best deal and recommendation for our client. And if you're yelling and screaming at the prosecutor, you're probably not going to get a good deal. So,
Right.
Of course, the facts of the case play a major role in that. But just having that rapport with the person does go a long way as well.
Okay.
And that could also open future opportunities down the road if you did want to think about changing careers or anything like that. So it's always nice to go out there and connect.
As you think about some of the experiences you've had in this position over the last 3 years, anything that jumps out as being especially rewarding and you felt really satisfied with what you'd accomplished?
It just feels really good to get people out of jail, I'd say. I mean, sometimes it's easier than other times. It just depends on like why they're in jail. Um, Writing up different types of motions with reasonings for them to get out of jail. I mean, that's always nice at the end of the day, be like, hey, I got 3 or 4 people out of jail. That's always a good feeling. And just seeing the resolution of the case, because I mostly deal with them in the beginning and middle of the case, and then the attorney deals with them at the end. So, I mean, it's also rewarding seeing that I help them get to that point.
Talking about, going into jail, things like that, is that something you do on a daily basis, or is it maybe not that often, but at least weekly you're in there talking to clients?
Pre-COVID, it was daily. We were getting a lot of, so I guess from the jail, when somebody's in there, the jail will either email or fax us a financial disclosure form. So that's what the inmates fill out to see if they qualify for a public defender. I'll get that, review it, and then I'll give them a call. That's kind of typically how we did it, was over the phone, or sometimes in person if we can't reach them over the phone. During COVID, like right now, I think the jail is at like half its normal capacity just because they don't have the COs. Like a bunch of them retired and got new jobs. So they're actually sending people from Hancock County who have like pending cases here, or who have commitment times because they didn't do their community service or their treatment. They're sending them to other counties like Seneca County and Wood County to serve out their time. So, and everyone else who comes in with new charges, they're typically not holding them if it's a misdemeanor. If it's a non-violent misdemeanor, they kind of give them the boot and get them out of there and just tell them to show up to court. So it's a weird time for us right now. It's the first time experiencing something like this, so we have to definitely adapt a lot. It's just kind of a daily, day-by-day basis type of thing. We don't really know what all is going to happen, or how many people in the jail are going to contact us or anything like that. So yes, before COVID, every day. Now it's maybe once a week for me. It just kind of depends.
Sounds like you rarely have 2 days in a row that are the same. A lot of variation.
Yes. A lot of yes, definitely. So
Do you have to spend much time doing research? You said you sometimes write up motions and things for the attorneys. Do you have to do research on prior law cases and things like that?
Not too often. We do have legal interns who mostly do that stuff. Um, but once in a while I will, like for a suppression hearing, which is basically saying that the prosecutors, the court, they can't use this evidence for X, Y, and Z. So I would do some research on that. I think one that I did recently was for, we wanted to suppress a urine test. So somebody had an OVI, they got stopped. I think they did the field sobriety test and everything, taken down the station, and then they peed in a cup, and then they sent that out to the lab to see if there were drugs in it. So I wrote up a whole motion, did a bunch of research on that, and then put that in there for a motion to suppress, and then gave that to the attorney to review and send over to the court. So I would say I do a decent amount, but a little bit less when we have legal interns around. So.
Right. So as you think back to yourself in high school and think about where you are today, is there anything that you know now that you wish you had known when you were in high school?
That's a good question. Don't procrastinate as much. I would say always be prepared. So that's one of the biggest things. We're kind of slower right now because of COVID. Before, my schedule would be jam packed, and I do 30-minute increments for my intakes, and I could have like 4 to 6 back to back. And it might not take the whole 30 minutes, but I need to be prepared to, if it does go over that time. So I try to fill out my forms as much as possible, just so I am prepared there and I'm not slacking. I'm not having a buildup of clients who are waiting at the door or anything like that and then getting overwhelmed that way. It helps me keep focused. So definitely be very prepared, and don't procrastinate. So that's probably my advice to my past self.
I would say that's good advice for all current students and probably a lot of adults, including myself at times.
Yes. Yes.
So Ian, I greatly appreciate everything that you've shared. And obviously, again, not a common career. And like you said, not even one that you really considered when you were leaving high school. So it's good to hear about those. And again, for people to recognize that not everyone falls into one of those, teacher, lawyer, doctor careers. There's a lot of variations within those fields. So I really appreciate you sharing all of this and wish you good luck as you continue down your career path.
Hey, thank you so much. Again, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this interview with Misdemeanor Investigator Ian Rafferty. I hope you learned valuable information from his career story. And to be sure you don't miss upcoming interviews, please click subscribe so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you for watching, and as always, remember the best part about Mondays is interviewing people.